Chapter 3. Sue sat with Rob on the floor in the living room. He had taken it rather well. She had been relieved at that. She did not have the energy to console someone else in her grief. It was more hers by right anyway, and she knew that. She looked at him as they sat together in comfortable silence. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was puffy. He was all twitchy and fidgety. There was something off about him. She wanted to stop talking about Michelle and ask him what had happened exactly. Whatever it was, it looked like he'd been through hell. The hardest part was just to get him to stop apologizing over and over, blaming himself. He kept saying that it was his entire fault. If he hadn't involved Michelle, then she would still be alive. Sue had been honest about the fact that she had considered that, but came to terms with the fact that it was all beyond their control, and death always was. That settled him down a little bit. "I know I didn't know her for very long," he said, "but she was a real good friend to me at a time when anyone in their right mind would want to be 1,000 miles away. She was an amazing and rare person. I'm so sorry, Sue. I'm not blaming myself by saying that. I'm just so sorry that you lost her." Sue wasn't shedding any tears. She was a little surprised at herself, but maybe she had cried them all out. "Me too. I miss her. I always will, but in a way, maybe it was meant to be. I don't know. All of this is bigger than us. I wish I could kill him all over again for what he did." Sue looked at him with a feeling of nervousness that she didn't fully understand. She had asked what had happened, and he had told her. He stated it all very simply. He had told it too fast. Something was missing. He had told her of the first brief altercation between himself and the killer at the apartment that ended when the demons started to come in the dark. He had then left for the author of the first book and had gotten another, more insightful book that he would show her later. It was very informative on the subject of the killer. Their psychic link had gotten stronger, and they had found each other and fought in a forest, and somehow Rob managed to stab him through the eye and into the brain, and that was it. Sue didn't know exactly what to ask him to elaborate on. The killer was dead, and she guessed that was all that mattered. She wished she had been there to at least give the fucker's corpse a good kick. "Do you think she was in there?" Sue began to ask as she looked at Michelle's room. "In the closet while you were fighting with him?" "I guess so. He couldn't have done it after I left because the cops were coming." They sat in more silence until Sue finally broke it at last. "I'm glad you're back, Rob," she said to him. "Really?" "Yes. I didn't want to be alone anymore, and here you are. I'm glad I had the alone time that I did to go through everything, but it's definitely great to have you back. I'm glad you're okay, and that it's all over. There's still the demon part of it to deal with. Oh, please, that'll be the easy part. I've been sleeping with the lights on anyway. I didn't think he or they were coming back to get me too or anything, but I couldn't sleep in the dark. I don't like it anymore. I'm used to the lights being on. You really don't mind the guy who brought the demons into your apartment and a killer who murdered your girl to stay with you? I told you already to stop talking like that." She was very stern and intimidating in her tone. She was different ever since she found out Michelle was dead. She would keep her with her in spirit. Michelle always wanted Sue's fire to burn brighter. She always told Sue that she didn't throw enough wood into it. Sue had kept it blazing since she hit the anger stage of her grief. No one was going to fuck with her or anyone she loved. She loved Rob. She really couldn't think of anybody else that she did. She still loved Michelle. No one would fuck with Michelle or her memory, and no one was going to fuck with Rob, not even himself. She would not allow him to beat himself up. No good would come of it. "Anyway," she continued, "not only do I want you to stay with me, but will you do me a favor? Anything. Will you sleep in the bed with me tonight? I hate sleeping alone. It feels weird." "Of course." "Thank you." He tested the waters of her mood and joked at her. "Just don't be trying to put the moves on me or anything." "Oh, you so wish you wanted to make out with me so bad." Rob opened his mouth in a shocked smile at the quickness and sharpness of her retort. She laughed. He realized that as awful as things were, they were going forward, and she was going to be okay. Maybe even great one day, hopefully not too far off. He wanted to see that. The next afternoon, after getting a couple hours of sleep, Sue rolled out of her bed. She had resumed sleeping in her own room ever since she had gotten back. She didn't really even like to be in Michelle's room for too long. It was too painful. The slatted closet door only looked evil to her, ever since she had gotten the news that was where they found her body. Rob had slept soundly next to her. He had snored for the first hour or so after he had conked out. At first she had regretted asking him to sleep with her. She thought she would have gotten a better night's rest if she had been alone after all. He had twitched hard a few times, shaking the whole bed. He had crashed hard. He must have really needed it. She wondered if he was having nightmares about killing the psychopath, She hoped not. She wanted sleep to come for her, just so she could escape for a little while and hopefully recharge her batteries. She was feeling very run down, and was starting to be aware of it, and was getting sick of it. It was not honoring Michelle to be a basket case. She did not want to have bad dreams about Michelle or any of it. She just wanted some real rest. She felt closure knowing that the killer had gotten his. That helped her come down a bit. She thought that Rob being back, and all of it being over, might let her get back to being normal soon. About 20 minutes after Rob had stopped snoring, she had gotten to sleep and stayed asleep for 5 hours straight. That was the most she had gotten since the news of Michelle's death. She might have slept longer, but her bladder woke her up. She left Rob sleeping in the bed. He had been through more of an ordeal than she had, at least on a physical level. Maybe he was damaged on an emotional or psychological level as well. They were sharing in the guilt over Michelle, but it was certainly not a competition. Things were just hard. They had been, anyway. Maybe they would be better. She wondered if she would ever love anyone in the way that she loved Michelle ever again. She couldn't imagine it. About an hour later, Rob cried out in his sleep-making suit jump. "You okay in there?" she hollered to him. "Yeah." He came stumbling out in his boxers. "Bad dreams?" He nodded. "That last one was a doozy. Want to talk about it?" He sat down with her at the dining table. He considered it and then said, "No, it was just a normal nightmare." He realized what he had just said. Oh my God, I dreamt like a normal person. No killer, no demons, just the bullshit in my head messing with me. I'm cured. Congratulations. She knew he had been nervous about sleep, and with valid reason. "How'd you sleep?" he asked her. "Good. I got the most straight-through sleep I've had in days." "Congrats to you, too." "Thank you." She was having Fruit Loops with milk. Michelle had picked out that cereal, and Sue was proud of herself for not getting emotional about it. She took out the box and poured it into a bowl with some milk and was eating it like any other normal person. Getting choked up would have killed her appetite, and she needed to eat. She had lost a few pounds in the last couple of days, and she was starting to look too thin. She was starting to look like she felt, and that needed to change. "Want some cereal?" she asked him. "Sure." She started to get up to get it. "What are you doing?" he scolded her. "Sit down, eat. I'll get my own." He poured himself a bowl when he realized that every dish in the kitchen was washed, except for the one Sue was eating out of. He looked around at the rest of the kitchen. It was sparkling. That was certainly not how it had been when he had left. Then he remembered just how bad it had been. "I'm sorry how I left the place. It must have been a mess." "You know, you really need to stop apologizing so much and grow a pair already. I don't have the energy to coddle you." Rob lifted his eyebrows. He was impressed with her frankness. "I had to do something with all that I was feeling. Most people let their places fall apart when they're grieving, I guess. This place couldn't have fallen any more apart, so instead I went on a cleaning fit." Rob looked around at the rest of the apartment that was dimly lit through the curtains by the sunlight. It was organized and spotless. The busted living room lamp had not yet been replaced, but it had been thrown out. There was no sign of it. She had kept the desk lamp on the small table by the sofa instead. She must have cleaned the blood off the wall and thrown away the bloody washcloth he had used too. He had warned her in the message of the damage and of the blood. He hoped she knew it was his blood and not Michelle's. At least not that blood. From the little bit he had gotten out of her about it, it sounded like all of Michelle's injuries had been internal. He was glad Sue had not been the one to find her. Sue had been spared the discovery of the body, but he still felt bad about her cleaning up what was really his mess. He offered, trying not to sound guilty, "Well, the place looks great." "It does, and I want to keep it that way. No more apples lying around." He laughed. "Yes, ma'am," he agreed in a not completely mock-obedient tone. "Thank you. What was with that gross apple slice under your pillow?" He sat down with her with his own breakfast bowl. "It's supposed to help ward off the demons, at least in your dreams." "Oh, well, then I guess we can allow for that," she accepted. Then she spoke again. "Rob?" she asked. "Yes?" "I want to ask for another favor." "Sure thing." "I want to go to Michelle's funeral tomorrow." He swallowed his bite fast before he spit it out. Yeah, of course. I didn't even realize. Why do you think that's me doing you a favor? You grow a pair already." "It's a favor because I want you to accompany me. I want to go in there on my terms. Understand? You'll see my pair." She was asking him not to go to celebrate or mourn Michelle in his own way. She was saying that it would be about her needs. He did seem to understand. They had gone to bed earlier the night before to try to help them get up earlier. It did no good. Sue had butterflies in her stomach, and Rob was stuck on a late schedule, so they just lay in bed resting and talking about silly topics. They ended up going to sleep around their usual time. It was nice for a time to feel usual again, for both of them. Rob went to sleep first. Sue followed soon after. They got up at 10 in the morning with the alarm clock beeping. The first thing Sue did was to make a pot of coffee. She felt like she was underwater, she was so out of it. While Rob was in the other room getting dressed, and the coffee started to trickle into the pot, she slapped herself as hard as she could in the face. She slapped herself again on her other cheek, just in case the reddening was too noticeable. She felt a little more alert. That was better. She went to get dressed while the coffee finished brewing. Rob was finished about a half hour before Sue was, and announced that he was ready when she was. He sat on the sofa waiting patiently for her. He had mentioned to her the night before that he didn't know what to wear. He had said he could go by his apartment to try to pick something out that was more appropriate than the few casual changes of clothes he had brought with him in the suitcase. Sue had said no to that. She had said what he had brought with him was fine. She had asked if he had his shirt with the Grim Reaper riding the white horse on it. It was one of his favorites, so yes, he did. He had said he hadn't worn it on his road trip because he didn't want to ruin it. She had told him to wear that. He had said he didn't want to appear disrespectful. Sue had said that Michelle really liked that shirt. He had offered to wear a jacket with it. Sue had simply said no. Then she had said to wear blue jeans with it. He had said that was all he had with him for pants. She asked if any of them had holes in them. He had said that one pair had a hole in the knee. She had said to wear those. That was what his attire was for the occasion. He sat in silence until she came back out of her room. She opened the door and cautiously stepped out. She looked beautiful. She was wearing very natural-looking makeup and silver earrings that jiggled slightly with every movement of her head. Her hair was done up in clips, but a few select strands hung elegantly free. She was wearing a yellow dress with thin straps on the shoulders. It hugged her high in the waist and flowed softly down to her shins. On her feet were 3-inch white heels. She felt girly and a bit uncomfortable. Michelle had always joked that Sue was more the butch and that she herself was the lipstick lesbian. For one of their few date nights out, Sue had gone to a department store and had bought the outfit for under $40. It had felt like a lot of money then. Michelle had thrown her on the bed after seeing her in it, and they had made love for almost an hour. Their dinner reservation had come and gone, but it had been worth it. They had ended up having a romantic dinner at an Italian restaurant and were serenaded by the piano player there. It had been magical. After they had gotten back home, they had more intense sex again, and that time Michelle had almost ripped the dress off of her passionately before making her climax several times in a row. The dress was still intact and fit on her feminine figure, making her feel exposed. She focused on how much Michelle had liked the way she looked, and she tried to see herself through those eyes. She wrapped her memories of Michelle around her like a snug blanket, and that helped her feel more confident. "You look," Rob began. "Shut up," she interrupted quickly. "Fantastic," he finished. She made a defiant expression and went through her purse to make sure she had her keys and everything that she wanted to feel like she was ready to go. She mostly wanted to distract herself from what Rob was saying. She loved him, but sometimes she really wished he would just not speak. "Are you ready to do this?" he asked her. "Ready as I'll ever be. Let's go." With that, they were off.